So here we are in a system not designed for women, not designed for millennials, not designed for inclusion. A system that is finally changing. Let's get familiar. Let's talk about business. Let's talk about lifestyle. Let's talk about womanhood. I'm Leslie Gray, bringing you passionate, informed guests to talk about millennial women building wealth, power, and influence in our modern era. The future for women and wealth is brighter than ever. Welcome to Love and Dividends. How's everyone doing staying fit and in shape during this pandemic? It is something that I've heard come up a lot. Home workouts are the new thing. People are really trying to find a way to transition their regular workouts to home, and I am no exception. In the first episode I mentioned, I am an Aries. Aries is the athlete of the zodiac. I am not claiming to be a great athlete, although I was a competitive synchronized swimmer and varsity synchronized swimmer in my youth. So workouts have always been really important to me, and this lockdown has really changed the accessibility of them and in many ways made it more difficult. I want to hear your thoughts. I think for some people, certainly for my brother, he's working out more than he ever has before. And then my youngest brother is missing a lot of his athletic activities, team sports. The middle one would say the two of us are much more competitive. We probably liked more organized sports. The middle one's definitely less competitive, but also very athletic. The reason I bring up my brothers and the Gray kids in general is we are 3 Aries. Yes, imagine being the parents to 3 Aries children. I will give you an example of what this vibe felt like. As a family, we are very into the franchise Star Wars. We grew up watching the original and what I still think of as the only ones that matter, episodes 4 through 6. So when they became digitally remastered, they went back into theater. We all saw them in theater. Some of my childhood friends are like, yes, I went with your family to Star Wars. Like, that's what you were doing. So that's what we all were doing. We saw 1 through 3, which I don't even want to talk about. And more recently, we've gone to all the new ones as adults. But this is the vibe of 3 Aries children, now grown adults, in a movie theater. Back in the day, I would go and get us like popcorn. Maybe I'd go to get something. And when I would come back in the theater, this is a prank my brothers would pull. Picture this. I'm walking into the front. This is the kind of movie theater where the entrance is like where the screen is. And then the theater goes up behind it. Yes, you're with me. You're visualizing. Great. They're sitting, mid-row, prime spots. The Grays get there early. We need the good spots for Star Wars. And specifically my middle brother would yell, Les. He'd put his hand up and yell. You might think everyone would turn and stare at him and be like, sir, please don't yell at this nice woman who's clearly got you popcorn and knows where you're sitting. Oh no. The whole theater gets a vibe of tension and stress and is looking at me like, I'm sorry, Les, is it? I think the people you're sitting with, they're just up there. He would not stop this, but the entire walk up the stairs to their seats. He's like, Les, we're over here. We're here. Again, the whole theater is not being like, sir, please stop. This woman knows where she's going. The whole theater is looking at me like, oh, come on, Les. It's very obvious where your group is. Les, I think they're yelling at you. Everyone's sort of weirdly trying to help you out, which is lovely, but very annoying. He would pull this same stunt in restaurants. And if I didn't find it so funny, I'd be very annoyed. So that's the vibe of 3 Aries children, and that is an example of why workouts are so important to this type of energy. You need a way to release it. So being someone who's so into fitness, being someone who'd always done it, I at first thought lockdown would be fine because I thought, well, I'll have maybe more time to go for a run. I'm just going to get so into these at-home classes, and I mentioned one in season 1 that I found that I adored. It was The Class by Taryn Toomey. But what I also found was it was just so hard, or I don't know, I just wasn't motivated to show up. A book that I think explains this is by Gretchen Rubin, Four Tendencies. She's also the author of The Happiness Project and actually many other books. And she opens the Four Tendencies and the reason she did that work with a friend of hers saying, I used to work out all the time. I was a cross-country runner. I also did cross-country in junior high, not to brag. But now I just can't as an adult. I can't seem to get motivated, even though I know I love working out. I know I feel good. And they brought up a variety of reasons we do things and don't do things in motivation. And it really resonated with me. And I realized, the reason I found working out so, maybe not so easy, but the reason I had a really good system in place partly was because I loved my gym. It's a fancy gym, I'm not going to lie. I probably would not have joined it on my own accord. It is expensive, except that where I was working provided a subsidy. And one of my colleagues was a member. She loved it. We started going together. She was a great motivator. I bring up the benefit from the employer because you'll hear us talk about that on the episode, how a lot of people don't use the benefits, financial or otherwise, and money for a gym is certainly a benefit of employment. Either because they think, well, someone else deserves it more, or, I don't want to take advantage. But I just want to remind everyone, this little PSA, that those benefits are things your employer calculates as part of your compensation. So make sure you sign up. I wish I'd signed up sooner. I ended up falling in love with this gym, and it's what kept me motivated to go. One was the community and the friendships. I'm missing that a lot. But two was the trainers. I bring that up because our guest today is named Tracey Bissett. She is the Chief Financial Fitness Trainer and President of Bissett Financial. She was a former executive at TD Bank before she started this, and now she uses this metaphor of getting in shape towards finances, getting financially in shape. That's why she calls herself a trainer. I miss the training and the group classes because there's a lot of benefit of someone being there to do two things. One, to remind you that you don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. Tracey says this about money. It's so true. And the gym metaphor works perfectly. I know when I first started showing up at some of the classes, if I'd compared myself to people who've been doing them for a long time, I would have been like, oh, I shouldn't even be here. These men and women are so fit. How can I keep up? But the trainers are great. They're like, that's okay. Just show up. Just do your thing. You can do some moves and not others. You'll know me as the one who walked in with a venti coffee at 7 a.m. Admittedly, that was a bit of a faux pas. People do not really appreciate drinking coffee during workouts. Do you do this? I do this. I don't know a lot of other people do. I think the caffeine's very helpful. It also looks just a smidge obnoxious. I admit that, walking in with a large coffee cup and my water bottle. But that was me. And why I bring it up is because I couldn't always do all the moves in that class. But, and my friend who went with me attests to this, we would show up. Just showing up 2 or 3 times a week, doing as much as we could, was so helpful. And that's what I think is important for finances. The most important thing is that you just show up, that you just keep putting the money in when you can. The second step, and another class I loved, was a weightlifting class. This is just the perfect metaphor for women investing because a lot of women would stick to somewhere between 2 to 5 pounds. They wouldn't want to lift any more than that. They'd be like, weights aren't really for me. I'm just going to do what I do. And that to me is similar to using like a high interest savings account. Like I'm good at saving. I'll come and work out, but I don't want to lift more than this. There was a great trainer in one of the classes I loved, and he would come over and be like, nah, you need to start lifting 10. You need to start lifting 15. You need to start lifting 20. And the women who'd been going to his class for a while, and the men too, would get comfortable lifting heavier and heavier weights. And to me, that's the perfect metaphor for investing. Hey, you've been at this a while. You're strong enough. You can start doing these more seemingly risky things. On the flip side, they wouldn't let you do them until you're ready. Otherwise, you'll get injured. So I love the idea of starting small, of continuing to build up, and of just showing up consistently being the biggest factor. Getting both fit and financially fit. Tracey has her own podcast, the Young Money Podcast, so she is always sharing training tips. She's a professor at Centennial College. She is from the East Coast of Canada, which is just honestly the nicest people are from there. Hate to stereotype. I'm a Toronto girl born and raised, but East Coast Canada is really something special. We had a lot of fun on our chat. Everything she said really resonated with me. I hope it will be the motivation you need to get your finances in shape, to start showing up for yourself, remembering that the work you do is for you, even if it's paying debt, even if it's paying someone else. And for me, if your finances are in good shape, get yourself in good shape. Be reminded of how important workouts are, moving your body, staying in flow, feeling good. It's really hard to be motivated on a rainy April day, but I'm sending that positive energy to you wherever you are. Let's get fit together. Hi, Tracey. Thank you so much for joining me on Love and Dividends.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I'm excited to be here.
So, Tracey, you are the Chief Financial Fitness Officer at Bissett Financial. So tell us a bit more about Bissett Financial, who it's intended for, and why you started it.
So I was a banker for many, many years at TD Bank in the areas of commercial lending and risk management. Like what happens sometimes in big organizations, there was a restructuring, and so my role was eliminated. So I took the opportunity, instead of jumping into another role, to think about what are all the things I like to do, and maybe I can build that for myself. And so I did. I used to love creating courses and facilitating training at TD. I loved working with business owners and entrepreneurs. And I've always been passionate about helping people learn about money. And I've done a lot of that in my volunteer time over the years. So I packaged all that up together. So I am the Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial. So we work with young adults, primarily through the Young Money podcast, sharing information and things like that, as well as we've got a Young Money planner coming out this year. And most of my time is spent on entrepreneurs doing group programs or one-on-one coaching. And those are entrepreneurs with really sales between 100,000 and 2 million, who are really looking to up their financial acumen and get the lingo and understand their financial statements and the cash flow, all that kind of stuff. And then, because I'm not busy enough, I'm a professor at Centennial College in their business school. I get to spend time with my young adults regularly, which is really fun.
And just out of curiosity, how would you define young adults?
I define them as 18 to 30-ish. And I know that there's a big audience who love them or love that age group who tune into. So we're getting the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, uncles, but we're also getting those young adults, 18 to 30-ish.
And is the focus on young adults because that's when a lot of the entrepreneurs age, or is it because you think that generation has sort of either a different view of wealth or different financial challenges than perhaps previous ones?
There's a need for financial education at all ages. And so I would love to see it start from when you're very, very young. But because I am also a business owner, I target an age group where people will actually pay for information and products and services. So that's why I chose that age. But that's also the age where you're making a lot of big life decisions. You might be getting into post-secondary. You might be coming out. You've got that student debt. You're thinking about getting a car. You maybe want to do a second degree. You want to get a house. All that stuff keeps coming, and the school systems have done a really poor job of teaching you. They tend to look to the parents, and then the poor parents have not had any education themselves. So most families are not having these kinds of discussions. So the podcast particularly is really an outlet to learn anything you might need to know about money. And my topics really range. I can make anything fit. So I love music. So I even tie in stories about what we can learn from musical artists, some of the Super Bowl halftime shows.
I was going to say, I heard your latest one. I love that tie to the Super Bowl. And you've done that every year, I think, on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some about Maroon 5, Taylor Swift, Justin Timberlake, Lady Gaga, Rihanna.
Cool.
We can learn about money from everything. And if we can make it fun and interesting, I'm not expecting people are going to become experts overnight. But if you can learn one thing new today, you're going to be better off.
I'm so here for that. And don't you think it's interesting? I know you went to Queen's for commerce, was your undergrad. I went to Queen's for engineering. So we are natural enemies, but we can be friends on the podcast. But both are degrees that are supposed to be very functional. You know, I took project management, you took business, but don't you think there was a financial component missing? I never felt, and I took a number of business courses, and I never really felt they taught me the practical stuff that you cover in your podcast and presumably in your course.
No, certainly not. They cover more the running of a business, not how do you manage your money for your life. They do talk about cash flow forecasting and stuff like that, but it's all from the business lens. At Centennial, where I teach, I'm in the business school and we're teaching students to become financial planners. So they're learning about how to serve others in that capacity. So I hope some of that's sinking in as well, because they don't do a lot necessarily of their own reflection and their own personal financial activities or exercises, but I think it makes its way in as well.
On that note, what would you say it is to be financially fit? And what does it mean also to be a millionaire? I understand what the number $1 million is and what it is to own $1 million. But I know you've talked before about sort of millionaire versus multimillionaire. And I know one of your slogans is making future millionaires, which I love. Do you want to talk about those two, sort of financial fitness and being a millionaire?
So I talk about financial fitness. I like to come from the positive. If we're talking about financial literacy, we're already starting from a negative place. And so people are defensive, they're embarrassed, they're ashamed. So I want it to be positive, and everybody knows something. But if you think about it, just like a physical fitness journey, we could be taking our first step off the couch to walk around the block, or we could be training to run a marathon. The same happens in our financial life. We could be just learning about different bank accounts, or we could be learning to be a more sophisticated investor. So we're on a spectrum. Everybody's starting somewhere different, and that's okay. Start where you are and don't try to leapfrog or compare yourself to others. For me, being financially fit, it's having the ability to ask questions. You're not going to know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. So getting comfortable with that, but knowing that you have some knowledge to start asking questions, you know where to go to get help. You're living within your means. So you've got a plan together to accomplish the goals that you want to set in your life. And again, those are very individual. And just because your friend has certain goals doesn't mean those need to be yours as well. Figure out what's important to you. And then if you need a professional to help you, work with a financial advisor or financial planner to help you get the path to go on those goals. That's financially fit for me. And Millionaire, it's kind of tongue in cheek, the name of the show, because I'm not expecting necessarily people are following every lesson, but if they do, they've got a greater chance of success. But it's about putting those good habits and those good routines. And for me, though, Millionaire is calculated based on net worth. So how much do I have in assets? How much do I have in liabilities? And when I subtract my liabilities from my assets, is it higher than $1 million? That's my Millionaire calculation. And so assets are stocks, investments, a home, a car, anything that has value. And then the liabilities are anything that you have to pay to somebody else.
Student loans, credit cards. Yeah.
Payday loans, car loans, anything. Yeah.
So first of all, you mentioned sort of shame and how everyone comes in knowing something, but some people are really embarrassed by sort of their starting point. Do you want to elaborate on that and sort of what you've seen? Personally, I think that's the biggest block. I've seen it more, even just in professionals, in lawyers, in engineers who are all very bright and think they should know, and then almost don't talk about it because I think there is such an embarrassment of not knowing.
So we form our views about money when we're very, very young. So between like 5 and 7 years old, we're really cementing that knowledge that we have. And if you come from a home where there wasn't enough, maybe there was tears, maybe there was anxiety, maybe there was yelling, who knows, you could have had collection calls all over the place, or it could have been in a home like mine where we talked about money stuff all the time. And my dad was a banker and we were very open about it. I would see my mom reconciling like the checkbook every month. I would see her making a grocery list because we only had so much money to spend on the groceries. And she was like mapping it out with the money. And so we weren't extremely well off, but we were probably middle of the road, I would say. And so we had money for all the things that we needed, but we weren't kind of having these extravagances all of the time. And I saw these routines being put in place. So whatever is happening to you when you're young, that stays with you and you carry it. And it's going to be your natural reaction to any kind of money situation. If there was upset in the house every time a bill came in, you're probably taking that with you. Even though you may have a good job and you may be living within your means and you have a bank account that can afford to pay the bill. I've had a 5-year-old tell me money's evil. So think of all that stuff that's going on that makes her think that. And she probably doesn't even know what money is, really.
I mean, I was even thinking, even people who grow up wealthy, there can be a lot of strange messages around how money's used to control, how, like there's still a lot of power dynamics, even if there's access to funds, the means through which it's received can add a lot of programming. But just because you brought up your childhood, I know you grew up in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia,
I did.
Where Canadian legend Sidney Crosby is from. I grew up in Toronto, so again, feel free to have whatever bias there, but I know it's quite different. And yeah, so do you want to speak to that at all and how that played in?
Absolutely. So I'm actually in the East Coast right now. I've been spending a lot of my winter in Fall River, Nova Scotia, so about half hour away from Cole Harbour because that's where my family is. But growing up, it's a smaller place. It's easier to get around. You have opportunities. You may not be able to see all of the things that you might see in a big city, but I mean, you make fun, and whatever your family and your friends are doing is really the fun thing about it. As a kid, I learned really young that I loved money, and I still love money, but I was probably 6-7 years old, and I wanted to go to the store every day, the Green Gables corner store. And so I'd ask my mom, can I have a quarter, 50 cents once a week? I could have the money. So I wanted to go every day though. So my friend Jennifer and I, we figured out ways that we can make money outside. And so we would have a little yard sale. We would have lemonade stand. We had a little community newspaper we made, and we'd go sell it. First, we'd do reporting from our neighbors. Then we put their content in our newspaper and we'd sell it. We would make up all these crazy little clubs or lessons that other kids could come to if they paid. So
course creator from day one. Yeah.
So we just wanted like the slushies or the sour soothers or the chips. And so we figured out a way to do it. But what was happening in my brain, it wasn't totally rational at that point, was if you work hard and you do things to get money, you can do stuff you want. And so that stayed with me my whole life. And we had a lot of lessons in my family. If I wanted something more expensive, my parents would say, okay, well, you save up your half and then we'll give you the other half.
Oh, I love that.
So it was really to test, do I really want this thing, or do I only want it because it's not my money? So it's the concept of saving. It's am I going to change my mind? And I remember that very first thing, I wanted a tennis racket. I saved up. It took quite a while, but I got the tennis racket. They put in their half. So you see that delayed gratification, that you can change your priorities if you want. All that stuff was coming when I was a kid. So very valuable and useful. And my parents were great. They helped me get into RRSP. So start for my retirement when I was 18 years old, my first year at Queen's. I was putting $25 a month coming from them. Just good discipline practice, which I was very fortunate to have. Most people don't have that in their family.
And that leads nicely to the next question, which is what's sort of the biggest mistake you're seeing your clients, Young Money, make with their money?
So the first and biggest is not taking accountability for that. And that can happen more with women than men, I find.
Really?
Because traditionally in a marriage, the woman wouldn't necessarily be responsible for all those things. So as we have people growing up, they may not have role models that showed them how to do that. So while they may have great salaries and they're working or they have a business, but they don't know that that's part of their life too, because they haven't seen that modeled by other people. So that's a really big one. Some of the other things, getting into the credit card trap, and it's very exciting. You're either on campus or you're at a sporting event, and look, just sign up for this card, you get this, whatever that free gift is. And we've got people now with credit card debt who don't understand how credit works. So now they haven't made payments on time. Now their credit score is impacted, and that creates a lot of issues. Another one I do see, particularly with women and young women, I've observed this at school and I've had listeners reach out. Young woman in love co-signs a car loan or some other kind of loan, and then the relationship falls apart and the lender is at the woman looking for the money. How can that be? That's the question I always get. I did an episode on the show really about framing the kinds of questions you might ask yourself. For instance, is this commitment that I'm signing up for, is it longer than I've known this person? Is it longer than I've loved this person? Because those are the kinds of things you want to think about, because you're going to be stuck in that kind of obligation, whether or not you're still in love. So thinking it through. I don't like to tell people what to do most of the time on the show. I do in my life. I tell a bunch of people, but on the show,
You're the coach. You're the trainer. You got to.
Yeah, I like to get the thought process going so that if another situation that's a little bit different happens, people can think through, oh yeah, I should use this kind of thought process to get there. So it's either not taking control of the situation, getting into debt you don't understand, which can be that credit card stuff, or it's trying to be supportive and show your love by putting your credit on the line and your responsibility for repayment.
Oh, the last bit about the credit on the line. And thank you for speaking to biggest mistakes that you see women making with money. But that last one, I think the stereotype, or what I've heard more, is always, oh, men spend so much money on women. You know, men, he lost all his money to this divorce, whatever. It's interesting for me to hear the flip side of it and the lack of understanding. And I do think a lot of the stereotypes for women involve being a caretaker, being a supporter, being a nurturer. The young women I speak to are like, yeah, I'm the first person family or loved ones come from for money. I'm not necessarily the highest earner, but I'm the one they know they can come to. I love your framing of just giving tools of, okay, let's look at the timeline of the loan compared to the timeline of the relationship, because there's nothing wrong, I think, with committing to a partner and being financially merged. But I like the idea of saying, well, wait a minute, how long?
Let's just explore what happens before we do it. And then, because there are lots of ways to be supportive that don't involve money. And so,
yes.
So somebody might try to guilt a person into, well, if you loved me, you would do this. Well, yes, I do love you, but I figured out my own budget and I don't have enough room to pay that if something should happen. Just thinking it all through, and could you get them some help in terms of creating a budget themselves? Could they find a cheaper car if it's for a car? What are the other options? So just so people are armed with more choices and flexibility.
And if you loved me, you wouldn't put me in this position. It's the flip side. If I love you, I'd help. But if you love me, oh, tricky. I think it's so interesting you touched on this. I, of course, in last season, we had a family lawyer on. I'm familiar with when it really goes to shit. Just, I don't practice family law, but a number of my former classmates and peers do. And they often talk about finances. I would say my family law lawyer friends are the most educated on it because, of course, money always comes into play at that time. And not just because it's when a partnership is dissolving, but they're also seeing at the formation of a relationship. If you're coming for a marriage contract, which is what we call a prenup in Canada, as I know you know. So what's something that a listener who this sort of stuff is resonating with, who's hearing the mistakes, who's like, yeah, that's me. What's something they could do today, one action or a few, to become empowered with their wealth? And obviously, getting a financial trainer named Tracey is a great step too. Don't want to diminish that, but what sort of something they could do today?
First thing is knowing your numbers. So exactly how much money do you make? Because most people, once they start a job, don't ever look at those pay slips ever again. So you may know what your salary is at a gross level, but how much actually makes it to your bank account? And why is that? Looking at all of the assets that you have. So which accounts do you have money in? What else do you have around? And then how much debt do you owe different people? And knowing the exact terms of it. If you've got a student loan, how much are the payments? What is the interest rate? When is it over? If you start to get into financial trouble, what are rights within your agreement that are available to you. So really getting comfortable with everything you're involved in to make sure you know then what your choices or options are if something does happen. A lot of young people, once they start working, they'll get caught up in consolidation loans. Can happen. And I have nothing against consolidation loans, but you've got the credit card debt, you got some student debt that's government sourced, some that's from a bank. Let's just roll that into one and we'll get a lower payment. Another thing that will happen is that you pay out that government student debt and all of a sudden you lose those abilities to skip payments, maybe to defer because you had extra protection in there, but you think, oh, it's going to be neater and tidier. I'm just going to get that one loan. Read the documentation, be knowledgeable.
Yeah, I really needed you about 7 years ago with my law school loan. No one sort of explained it to me. And you're exactly right. I started articling at a large firm. I did the exact same thing. I said, okay, OSAP, suddenly OSAP's charging me interest. Let's just compile that into my bank loan. Bank loan can't deal with that right now. Let's just pay the minimum. Also, the way law is structured is very strange because if you get a job at a large firm, which is quite a coveted job and a high paying job, there's actually quite a gap before you get paid because you don't start until sort of September. So I had to roll my loan up in May. It's this whole you get the summer off, go crazy. You'll have a big paying job. So what does that look like? At some point, it's either you're doing it on your credit card or going further in your student loan. Mm-hmm. After articling, there's a full summer off where, again, it's you've been hired back. You're making great money. Go enjoy this time. And that's great. But no one was really there for how to afford it. And even financial plan's the right word, how to plan for it. I know down the road I can be making good money, but what should I do right now? And I do wish I'd had better tools then. And that's why I wanted to start speaking about this to young, educated, professional women who still don't feel like they have access to it. And then the other thing I saw in law a lot was that the advisors sort of came around much later. That's why I love that you're also talking to young money is I heard a lot of horror stories of sort of not younger professionals finally being I'm on track. I'm good to go. When can I retire? And I was you have an insane lifestyle forever, indefinitely. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like that model either. I was it can't be that I work this hard to get the big payoff to then have to work forever to afford the lifestyle I've amassed. None of that seemed good to me, but everything you're saying about the loans and how to deal with them, I really wish there were more resources. And I felt when I tried to ask a lot of those questions, I got a lot of answers that were really disheartening. Oh, it's a lifestyle choice. You have to choose your lifestyle, or, oh, it's so personal, or it's really person to person. And I was looking around okay, but you're talking to a group of people graduating from law school. So actually, no, we all have probably a range of debt, depending. Yeah. People get help, some don't. But here's the upper range. And we're all in the same salary range. And most of us are in a big city for our first job. So we're all in the same rent range. Can't you get more specific for us? And I just felt the advice, either wasn't there or wasn't presented in a manner that was attainable.
Yeah, a really great thing to do, especially if you're looking for kind of that blueprint, is to work with, I would say, a fee-only planner, because they can create that financial plan after talking through your goals with you and then set out the plan for you. But how you go about accomplishing it, you're going to go away and you may do that on your own, or you might find another financial planner who does investments and stuff. But at least if you sit down, they're walking you through that whole thought process of, okay, what's important to you? What are the things you want to accomplish in your life? What's the time frame you want to do that? Okay, let's see, based on your existing salary, your existing debt, how would you get there? So it puts everything together, and to find the right person, it's almost like dating. You have to talk to them. You have to see if you can communicate in a way that makes you feel heard and respected, and that what they're saying makes sense to you, because there's a lot of financial people out there use fancy acronyms. They talk about things in a complicated way. That's just how they do it. And that's fine for some people, but you don't need to choose them.
And it makes it less accessible for sure. So given the year we just had 2020 with the markets taking a bit of a dive in March 2020, and what did that bring up positive or negative? And what did you see happening with your clients during that time?
One of the strangest things, and I think it is kind of a Canadian thing because I haven't seen it anywhere else, but individuals and business owners alike weren't all flocking to receive the government support. So they were saying, oh, I'm not so bad off. I'm going to leave that for some other people who need it more than I do. And I kept hearing it in May and April, May, June even. And I'm like, you have to stop this. Because if you actually qualify and you're eligible.
So Canadian.
So I don't want people to go and game the system and get money they don't deserve or they don't qualify legitimately for. But if you meet the criteria, get the money. If you get the money and you don't need it, save it. If it is a loan and it needs to be repaid, just keep it. But we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long this is going on. You need to build up your emergency fund because we knew when we started the pandemic, almost 50% of Canadians could not pay their bills if their paycheck was 1 week late. Like that's the situation we went into the pandemic from. Eating into your savings when the government's offering you money? No. If you're eligible, get the money, keep it. Don't blow it on whatever you might think. Be responsible with it. But let's build up that cushion so that as things unfold that we don't know yet, we will be prepared. And by the way, we're all going to pay for this in our taxes. So you're paying for it anyway. So get your share.
We're very aligned. I mean, I feel that way about so many things. Even the spectrum of compensation. Like, it's so interesting that people are like, well, that's not really for me. Or like, I don't know. I don't need that RSP matching or any of it. I'm like, everything that's available to you.
Oh, I had that written down. Hey. Employee stock plan too. Yes. So many people will join corporations that they have it and they won't enroll. And it's free money. Always take free money.
Always take free money. And yes, something took me a while to get. You're right. It is this like Canadian, it's this like magnanimous, like selfless thing. But then it's not that selfless because then when you need help later, it's like, well, that was supposed to be the help. Mm-hmm. I saw it even at work. I was like, you're absolutely right. It's a fine line between gaining the system, cheating the system, people taking advantage, not condoning that ever. But I did find there were a lot of people where I'm like, wait, why haven't you signed up for this? Like, why aren't you like, this is for you. Someone's done the calculation to make this available for you. Yeah. Now just do your part and fill out the form or signature, give them the account, like whatever you need to do.
The government offers the money, you get the money. And if you don't want to spend it, great, just save it. So if you do have to pay some back or you're going to have a tax implication, you're all set, but don't leave the money out there.
Yeah, I think that about saving a lot, especially like emergency accounts, or I like to call them cash on hand because I don't love to put out the word emergency. Like I'm like a true emergency, different thing. But yeah, unexpected expense. Or for me, it just feels good to be like, I have access to cash right now if I need it, if a loved one needs it. But the flip side is that's mine that I created for me. And again, my loved ones or anyone I decide needs it. But that's not to allow an employer to say, oh, well, you've saved up, so you're okay, right? If I don't do this, like that's not for someone else to decide. That's not, well, if you have to start in another month, you're okay, right? You have savings, like sort of not my problem. Like,
that's right.
Like that's for me.
That's none of their business. It's not my business what you spend money on. If you're my friend and you're always complaining to me that you can't pay your bills, I'll probably say something to you. But other than that, that's your life. I think if people live within their means, they can do whatever they want. But we get caught up in social media. We start seeing all these different things. In families, people will always make comments. Oh, look what they're doing. How do they afford that? And especially if someone is borrowed, oh, they didn't pay me back that money. And now look, they're going on a vacation. But it happens all over the place. It also happens in businesses. So for anybody who's watching who has a business, this stuff all comes up in pricing. Oh, they couldn't afford it. I shouldn't charge them that much. You don't know what their situation is. Totally. It's not your concern. Yes. Also, even if they don't have the money, you might be offering something so valuable that they want to source the money because they want it to improve themselves for whatever reason. Just stay out of other people's money stories, money situations. Mind your own business.
I love that. And especially the underpricing or undervaluing thing. I'm so glad you spoke to that. I learned this lesson and I'm so glad I got to be in this meeting. It was a meeting of people much more senior than me trying to decide a lawyer to hire of a sort of suite of very high-end lawyers. So these are people who have money to spend, but my thinking going in, and many people at the meetings was, well, since these are all great, you'll go for the cheapest one. And almost with no more information, like here's these, I think it was 4 or 5, there was one that was significantly higher per hour than the rest. And the team at the meeting was like, we need him. We need that one. It also is such a statement of value.
And that person's confidence, because they're thinking that person, like they're standing up for their value. They're going to fight for us and do what we need. And
totally. And so it's true, when you undervalue yourself, you might lose out because they might select someone who values themselves higher. In fact, I suspect they will.
Yeah. Because that's just being projected. So keep yourself out of other people's minds about their money. Mind your own business. Don't be judgmental. It's super hard. The reality is, if you think that you don't know how someone's doing it, because I get this question a lot. Like my friend that I had the little businesses with when I was a kid, she says to me all the time, how are they doing it? I'm like, they're not. They're using debt. They're like, all their cars are leased. They have a big mortgage. They're going on vacation on credit. Like, just because somebody looks like they're doing all this stuff doesn't mean they're wealthy. They're doing a lot of stuff and they have a lot of stuff. That's what's going on. We don't know how they're funding it. And it's really none of our concern. But because I've seen behind the curtain so many times, I know that how a lot of people are doing it. So don't try to emulate other people. Focus on what's important to you and how you can accomplish it.
So here for it. Yeah, there's a really funny meme that me and my friends were into a few years ago. It's like, one of my favorite games to play is watching other people on social media and trying to figure out how they afford their lives.
Yeah. Like an outfit of the day. Like, who can afford to have new clothes every day? That's not realistic, but people do.
Yeah, I'm with you. And part of the theme of this podcast is meant to be, spend your money on anything. I'm so here for it. But if you're having an outfit of the day, maybe that is what brings you joy. Maybe that works for you. You are not maybe buying a condo. Like there's also just a trade-off. Yeah, I like mind your own business when it comes to money. Mind your own money business.
Yeah, I talk about it on my show all the time, but I love music and I love going to concerts, and I spend a lot of money on concerts. Like last year was so sad for me because I had like 25 concerts I had tickets for. So my life dramatically changed and I got all my money back, but that's my fun. And if that's where I want to spend my money, 90% of the population can think it's crazy, but it's not their business, because I'm taking care of myself and my budget and everything I have to. So where I choose to spend it needs to be important to me or the person, whoever it is.
I would so agree with that. And I actually think money management becomes easier when you're clear on what you're saving for and what you're spending on that you can enjoy.
This is a funny thing my aunt was saying to me last week, but she has 2 young adults or young money listeners herself. So she says she does the dishes. She doesn't skip the dishes.
Oh, versus skip the dishes. I do the dishes.
Yes. It's lifestyle, it's choice. It's because all of that stuff, like if you're eating out a lot, just adds up and you might not actually be conscious. So it just all comes back to knowing your numbers and making sure the money goes to the places that are important to you.
I also think when you come from a place where you're either know you can't afford or you're not sure, again, when I was sort of in the haze of had to be focused on work, didn't really know what was happening with my money, was like, I'm paying off the minimum amount. I have to, but that's it. Like felt out of control. Then every big spend felt like, I don't know if I should. And it took away from the enjoyment of it. Like it feels totally different, but every so often when I want to support a local restaurant or get it, it feels very different doing that when you come from an empowered place where you're like, I have the money, this is my treat. That feels really good.
And everybody gets to choose. So if convenience to make your life go smoother, if that's worth it, do it. Nobody really gets to tell anybody else what to do, as long as another person isn't being expected to make it all better.
So what do you think the future looks like for women and money?
I think it's very bright. I think a lot of financial institutions and financial advisors and planners have really turned their attention to women. Women live longer. Women are going to be holding the resources at the end of the day if they're in a marriage with a man. The attention has shifted, and there's a lot more around empowerment and education for women at a younger age so that they can be responsible for that throughout their whole lives. A great financial planner in Toronto area, and she does a lot of speaking, is Jackie Porter. She was raised by a single mom, and her mom passed away when she's around 15, 16 years old. So she had to take care of herself. She had to learn, and that's what propelled her to be an advisor. She's written a great book, Single by Choice or Chance. So how women really need to take accountability and responsibility and learn that piece of their life. Be a partner to that. If you are in a relationship, if you're on your own, take accountability, but you don't have to do it alone. Find someone else who can help you and support you to learn. We start where we are. We can only move forward. We're going to make some missteps, but if we think of it as a lifelong thing that we're going to continue to improve ourselves because it helps us. Sometimes people get detached from the person they're saving for, which is really them, but because it's not them right now, it doesn't feel very fun. So keeping in mind your goals, that you're doing all of this for you so that you can do the things that you set out as important. It helps you have patience with yourself when you do make a mistake. And we're all going to do things we didn't pay attention, which happens a lot. So even this happened to me because I was super busy last year. My dog has health issues. And so I use my health insurance very regularly, but I didn't put my claims. One of my claims didn't get paid because I missed the cutoff. So I'm as fallible as anybody else. So get a system, get to know your numbers, and then cut yourself some slack if you do make a mistake.
I really like you're doing this for you. You're saving for you, even if it's true. In the early stage, when I then got control, my first move was like, I just want this student loan dealt with. I love the perspective of actually, I'm doing it for me.
If you have a lot of debt like that early on, it can delay all the other milestones that come in your life. And so you feel like, what's the point of my life? I can't even get out of this debt. And now I can't get out home. Like I wanted to do more school, or I can't travel, or whatever it is, it really delays those things.
All of the above. Is your dog okay? How's your dog?
Yeah, she has epilepsy. So that was one thing. And then she also has autoimmune arthritis. We figured it out, but she sees a doctor regularly, and she's okay. She's a very sweet golden retriever.
Golden retriever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so we're a Rosie Tiger Lily.
Rosie Tiger Lily. Sorry, I'll stop.
So we are a therapy dog volunteer team. So before COVID, we would go every Friday. We would go spend time with seniors. So it was really fun for me because I like to volunteer, but I wanted something where she could come.
Rosie. Okay, sending positive vibes to Rosie. So what does wealth mean to you?
It means having enough of the things that are important to you. And so it could be time, it could be money, it could be experiences, and that you're living within your means so that you have the financial resources to do it. But oftentimes, especially with business owners and women in particular, they'll say, I want to have a little business. I just want to make a little bit of money. And they'll say, well, okay, but why don't we make a lot of money? And then we can decide, do we want to hire people to help us? We can give money to other people. We can give of our services, because now we can give pro bono sometimes and help others who maybe couldn't afford to work with us. So I'm a big fan of making money so that you can choose, and then you can give of your time or your money. I think that covers it.
So accurate. And I'm so happy you sort of call people on it. I've had so many similar discussions. It's like, I just want a little something. I just want a little bit of a bonus to know I'm worthy. I'm like, why don't you get the whole thing and you can decide what part you keep and what you don't need. I feel the same way, but what's with that? Sorry to jump in. What's the deal with, I feel like Seinfeld, what's with people being like, yeah, I just need a little something, or I just want to make a little bit of money. Do you hear that a lot? Because I've heard that a lot.
All the time.
Bananas.
And it's oftentimes it's from moms who are raising kids as well. And so they're juggling and there's a lot of stuff going on. But when you work by yourself, you have to do all of the work. So you can't actually grow your business and you can't make as big an impact because you're the only one who can do anything. So you do need to bring on more people, even if it's part-time, even if it's contract, just to do that. And then you can free up your time to go and volunteer if you want to, or to take a nap, or to go to the gym, or whatever you want to do. But you actually give yourself more freedom and flexibility the more money you make. And it sounds like it would be a given, but I think years of women not seeing other women do that, years of women not asking for the raises or negotiating things, or just not handling the money part of situations, like that just feeds into the way you think about stuff. It's so unconscious.
It is. And I mean, that's really what this brand is about. It's just getting familiar with seeing women doing it. I think it's, even though this is a podcast and I'm literally spreading words, and I know you have a podcast, we both teach with words, but words don't really teach. Actions teach. Seeing it teaches. Mm-hmm. Obviously, seeing you run your own business is also highly empowering, I'm sure, to so many.
Well, and seeing for my students, like seeing that I was an executive at a big bank, I know what I'm talking about. They can have more confidence in that can be them. How are they going to be able to do that? How are they going to have to network to be able to even get those doors open to them? And just showing different paths to success is so important, because we haven't had everything role modeled before. So let's show all the options.
On that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Do you love our podcast art? I'm actually obsessed with it. It was created for us by a very talented local artist right here in Toronto named Claire Fang. And due to popular request, we're making it available to you. Check out our website, loveanddividends.com, to get your very own custom Love and Dividends swag. So even as the host of a financially focused podcast, I am constantly confusing these financial terms. What I did for myself was create a handy little cheat sheet to keep everything clear. And now I'm sharing it with you. I hope it will be a helpful tool as you tune in regularly to our show. I don't love the term cheat, but I love the idea of a cheat sheet. Sign up for our mailing list at loveanddividends.com to get a free copy of my beautiful Love and Dividends cheat sheet emailed right to you. And just on the note of role modeling, one of the things I found, just because of two professions, electrical engineering felt like three generations behind, where I was like, oh, I am the only woman, and this bathroom is actually the janitor's closet that you kindly converted. Thank you so much. It's a very large sink. It's actually very helpful. Great. So it was like a different time. And then I feel like when I went to corporate law, I got to jump ahead where I'm like, okay, I'm not the first woman to try this. We've done this for 2 generations. And I had some exceptional female role models, but I had a lot of negative. Here's one thing I'd be curious for you to comment on from the executive level that I heard a lot that drove me nuts. It would be like, who's actually the worst to women? Other women. These women at the top are so mean. These women at the top, da-da-da. I just feel like a lot of the women, quote, at the top were given these terrible reputations by chance or by choice. And so those of us sort of striving to that, we're like, well, wait a minute. I don't see myself that way. I see myself as still deeply feminine. Basically, I don't want to have to be the only woman doing it a man's way when I'm so in my feminine. I don't know. Did you see any of that? Can you talk to any of the really annoying, and again, very sexist things like, oh, women are the ones who stop other women from achieving?
And sometimes they do. So there's certainly some truth to that. I've had tons of great female and male bosses. I would say a lot of my huge sponsors were men, though, very actively promoted me and encouraged me. I think that people are judging women unfairly, because if she says the same thing as a senior executive as the man does, people are going to view it from a whole different lens. So make no mistake, anybody who's a senior executive has certain ways that they're accomplishing that. They've got to be quite quick at decision making. They've got to be pretty aggressive. They got to be determined and focused. And sometimes that doesn't always show up in kindness. I think it can, but it doesn't always. I would say if you're a woman and you feel that way, though, I think you want to look for cultures that support that in a better way. I'm involved with SheEO, which is an organization led by Vicky Saunders, founded in Canada, but it's women investors, they call them activators, who invest in other women-led businesses. And so I have fun investing because it's not a lot of money, but I get to pick who actually gets my money. There's all these women ventures will apply and you get to vote and you actually have a say in who gets chosen. But what's phenomenal is the community of women who are the fellow activators or investors. And so it's this really great support system where everyone is focused on this. So like any large group of anybody who's in an association or a group, you like some people, you don't like other people, but the sentiment is the same, that we're all here to move things forward and create a new funding model where women can get access to capital. And Vicky's taken it to the US, to Australia, to New Zealand, and the UK. So all these other countries are adopting this similar model. And my point with all this is, if you don't like the values that are being reflected back at the organizations you're looking to work for, look for some other ones or start your own. Because there are all kinds of cultures out there. And if you can't find anything anywhere, make your own and you can do it.
Yes. Yes, Tracey, everything you're saying. Thank you for bringing positive spin. So given money is all about compounding gains, and we spoke a bit about this earlier, what is your sort of, I wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger? Or I know for you, you call them millionaire moves. So maybe you want to talk about a few of your favorites. I really like those episodes of your podcast, by the way.
Well, the thing I wish I had done, and very much like the more I think about it, the more I'm like annoyed with myself. In high school and at Queen's,
kind to yourself.
I know there was investment clubs in high school and at Queen's. For those who know what people who go to Queen's for, there is a large part of the student base.
People love also talking about Queen's.
Yeah, so there's a large part of the commerce fellow student base comes from wealth, which is not where I came from. We were a middle-class family. A lot of men. Yeah, it was the way that it was. And so when I went there, I was intimidated and I didn't think I was as smart as those people who went to the club. And so I didn't go. And that was just not good. Yeah. And then it's funny enough, when you start working with people in group projects and you see people in other classes, you see who's gone on to become partners of big firms. Like you should have been there. So give yourself the confidence to do it, even if it's a little bit scary. Like I really wish I had. And I think that could have changed. It would have helped me make money faster, I think. Because I made money in a very kind of strategic year-over-year growth. I mean, I bought my first home pretty young, so I was able to capitalize on the appreciation and the value. But if I had started investing in stocks, like at the same time I did my RSP, that could have changed things earlier. And then we'd open up more freedom, more flexibility.
And do you think the reason you didn't join that club, do you think it was just intimidation? Like, do you have any words, any motivation for someone feeling that way right now, who's like feeling that like, I want to do it, but who am I to be there? What would you have told your younger self?
Again, it comes back to mind your own business. Like, stop thinking so much about those people. Like, who knows how they feel about themselves? I'm projecting what I think I feel about them and what I think about them, which may not be true. Mind your own business and do the things you want to do.
Mind your own business.
It's a female thing too, because women spend more time thinking about stuff and analyzing and assessing situations, and the guy would just go there. So he wasn't worried about like who else was there. He was there. Sometimes it's good to have a little bit more of that attitude as well.
And I will give credit to role models. I think if you can see one other person in the room that you can see yourself in, not just female, but maybe from your background or something like that. While that was happening in commerce, I was convening the science. Don't know if you ever heard of or went to the science formal in Grant Hall, the big engineering formal every year. It's like a big construction project. I was the convener. I was the head of it. I always have to be that student. And on the floor, when there was full construction happening, I noticed if I had just like one or two women down there, a bunch more women would go. Because again, construction is something we think of as just male, but even just like women can hammer stuff too. Yes, there's some heavy lifting. I don't want to act like, I don't want to always be like men and women are the exact same. We're not, but there's definitely things that could be happening down there that women could do just as well, sometimes better. All the injuries were always men grabbing, like not thinking with a hammer, and I'd be like, now we're at the hospital, call the insurance. But with women, there was lots, they'd stick to painting until there was like one or two women doing it. So I'd always be like, hey, we have to put two women on the floor. Got pressure from that because it was like, well, we should just put the best people. Who cares? Don't be so, rah women. But I was like, if we just put two, then all the women who cared to do it, and 2 who want to do it, it wasn't like, it was like, if you just encourage 2 to do it, give them a job, make them feel safe here, suddenly all these other women are like, yeah, I feel like doing that too, and just do it. So I do think you need like a little catalyst sometimes of a role model, of an invitation, and then mind your damn business. I'm obsessed with that. What has been your silver lining of 2020, the darkest year, and flooding into 2021?
Connection and making sure you're in touch with people and just bringing down the busyness. Like I have to say though, during the pandemic, it's been really, really busy because people want to talk more. And I am kind of zoomed out some days, but people are making a more active interest. And so I've been able to keep in touch with people. Maybe I'd see once a year or talk to them once a year, but it become more frequent. Downside is the isolation, but then you're able to still talk with everybody and have those connections.
I love bring down the busyness. I've felt that too, especially in Toronto, frankly, especially just even grocery stores or things that are still open that used to be so pushy and crowded and hurry up. People are lovely. People are like, oh no, go ahead. Oh, let me get the door for you. Are you okay? Like you just feel that busyness has come.
And I used to drive a lot between appointments or different places. So between the traffic, the construction, am I going to be late? Did I do everything I needed for that meeting? Like now when you're home, like you can do it a little bit more leisurely. It's less of a frenzy.
And now it's time for Money Wins. Money Wins is a way you spent, saved, or invested your money that feels like a win. On to our final segment, Money Wins. So anything you've spent money on, saved money on, invested. To your point, it's no one's business, but sometimes we are very curious and want it to be our business. So
yeah, we get other ideas from hearing from other people, and I certainly do too. So a couple things I kind of alluded to before, but my parents helping me start my retirement savings when I was 18 years old was a huge one. And it was $25 a month. And I did that for a long time. But then also when I started my first job at TD and getting into the benefits program, people encouraging me, and there was an active mentor at work who encouraged me to read everything. And I mean, I'm young. I'm like, oh, I'll just sign up for these things. And they're like, no, read through everything, get signed up. And then again, to that point of get free money. So I got in the stock plan. I joined the pension. And I remember my dad and I had a debate about that. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to work there that long. I'm not going to go in the pension, which is one thing young people typically don't do because they're like, oh, who cares? But he's like, no, you never know. So I did. And then like I was there 15 years. I would have missed out on some of that period if I didn't do it at the beginning. Pay attention when people are offering you things. A lot of times in a job where you have salary and benefits, the salary might be lower, but the benefits are very, very good. So make sure you understand them. Another thing that's part of that is I had always critical illness insurance, which a lot of people don't take. But if you get diagnosed with a life-threatening cancer, you have a heart attack, stroke, you get a check immediately when you have critical illness insurance. It's insurance for when you're alive to help you with defray any costs or loss of income. Most of my friends, even at TD, didn't have that. So I've talked to them, they've been listening to the podcast. They hear me talking about it. So they've got onto that. My brother had cancer at one point. He got his critical illness payout, but it was not as significant as it should have been because he just quickly ticked the box. So he had the lowest amount he could take. So just be in the details and get all of the stuff that is of value and make sure you take it. How's your brother doing now, by the way? He's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down critical illness pay and it meant like, I don't know if I have it. Like I'm going to go.
A lot of people don't, but it's super important.
Yeah.
And then when I was self-employed, super happy when I reached the point where I could get disability insurance. Because your health is your primary way. If I don't have my health, I can't earn money. So I got to make sure I protect all of that ability to earn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this interview and for joining us. But I want to sign off now with love and dividends and with gratitude.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Love and Dividends podcast. Please subscribe, share, and rate us with 5 shining stars on iTunes. It really helps us rise in visibility to reach more listeners like you. To find out more, check out our website, loveanddividends.com, our Instagram at Love and Dividends, or email me, Leslie@loveanddividends.com. This episode was produced by Holly Dodson. Until next time, I'm Leslie Gray, signing off with Love and Dividends.